Okay, guys, this is my attempt to just, in a very short manner, to summarize what is needed in a problem statement. Now, as I wrote to you in my email, if you don't do it the way I am teaching you, no big drama. However, you will be encountering problems as you will go through the research, and these problems then will help you to actually redo your problem statement, because somewhere in your assignment, whether it will be in its second phase, which is called assignment 2, or third phase, somewhere you will actually have to say, in this research project, this is what I intend to do. So there is no way of getting around it. It's not going to disappear. The reason why I actually try to focus you so much on getting it right, it's because you have to learn something. So the idea is not necessarily you getting it right, but actually you getting into a rhythm of it and the logics of it, and start to think how other people will read your text. Other people doesn't mean sympathetic lecturer in your unit, it means unsympathetic lecturer, or also in future when you actually start writing for your institution or for journals, or if you would like to actually write a proposal for a master's research or PhD, right? So this skill is not gonna go away. So there it is. In my week 2 YouTube, I said to you that purpose and problem are related, right? So it's very important. And you can see here on this, in that picture of the whiteboard from the on-campus lecture on week 2, the purpose is here, improve school performance, and the problem actually came out from that. Now, how do we do it? How do we do it? How am I gonna tell you that? First of all, I might say something else. And the thing that I would want you to actually see is as follows. Some of you have written your problem statements, and actually you do have the word in order to, but because you're not a linguist, you can't see that the in order to in some of your proposals actually fulfills a different function. So I am not going to go into it and explain to you what function it fulfills in those statements. But in brackets, if you can insert, in order for this project to offer, right, offer better understandings or whatever, then it's fine. But you will see that some of you will not be able to insert this, because that in order to actually does in your statements does not relate or refer to the purpose of your project. It actually refers to the purpose of other people, right? And just because you inserted those two words, it doesn't mean that it did the trick. You have to actually see the relationships in the sentence. So that's what I wanted to say. So very briefly, the purpose is very difficult. Why is it difficult? Because it actually needs to sit in readings, right? So the 2 weeks, and this is the third week, we spent together, actually they were there for you to think about your problem statement. But as I said in my first video, you can't just sit on the throne and think about it. It's too hard. You had to actually do some readings. And the problem statements that I often see, not from all of students, but from many, they have absolutely no basis in reading. So consequently, you come up with terms that were used last semester. Transformational leadership, or leadership. It's even better. It's even broader. But what happens? That requires writing of a trilogy. You can't. It's very hard to write about transformational leadership or leadership in altogether, because it's such a broad topic. You may not be aware of it, but if you're not aware, then that signifies to me that you have not done any readings from LearnLine. And that's what they were there for. They were not there for you as resources to finish your assignments. They were there as resources for you to start the assignments. So as you can recall, maybe, here we had, I might remove this thing because it's irrelevant. We had this picture on YouTube, and as I asked in class, how many students actually can recognize this picture? Nobody could. So it shows to me that some students think that they can firmly just sit and write the proposal without actually going through my lectures or through the YouTube podcast. Well, you can't, and I cannot do the homework for you. So here, coming back to purpose, something like a transformational leadership or leadership itself, it's this whole square here, the entire square. And as you can recall, maybe I put this red line to show to you that there were things done in particular. There's a division between frameworks of thinking. So what I asked you to do is to take this concept of leadership or transformational leadership or change or community building or whatever, and do some reading on it so that you can now come up with a particular strategy, particular aspect of this big topic that you will be addressing in your problem statement, right? You cannot say the purpose of this research project is to improve the well-being of all people in Cambodia. That's just too hard, and it's totally incomprehensible. Nobody knows what that means. I mean, when we sit at the dinner table and we talk about the well-being of people in Cambodia, maybe we can sort of speculate. But really, what does that mean? Is it like a general thing? How do you test it? How do you deal with that concept of well-being? So there we go. The purpose must be related. The problem comes out from the purpose. The purpose itself is very often in your initial thinking something really big, like this big square here. You need to now do some readings and elicit from that big topic something that is relevant and something small, and then you can actually defend it. Here's your literature. I read that transformational leadership is really important because we are always in the process of change. I also have read that distributed management is much nicer because it allows us to actually satisfy more criteria. Not just satisfy more criteria, it allows us to actually change a perception on the organization. We're no longer seeing an organization as a bunch of ducklings following the mother duck, right? Well, we're seeing it distributed management or a whole community approach to management. What it does allow us to do is to actually see every person is responsible, not just belonging to the school, but also playing their part in its leadership, in its management. So now, since staff or teachers are the organization, therefore we need to actually approach change not as a followers, but as a community strategy, right? Wow, beautiful, I love it. You back it up with readings and few paragraphs, People say to me, how can we invent 1,500 words? I was looking on the internet myself very recently to publish one of my papers, and I was absolutely appalled that a lot of journals, high quality journals in Australia, do not accept things beyond 4,000 words or 6,000 words. Mine was like 12,000 words. So you could say that maybe I could have shortened it, but sometimes you can shorten things and sometimes you can't. So there. So it doesn't matter how I dealt with it. The point is 1,500 words. You could spend 1,500 words just to justify why you're using a whole community approach. But this is not all you have to write about. Now you have to write about you also have to write about the problem. And you would say this follows. So management is important, right? And style of management in order to support change is called transformational leadership, and not in the purpose, but somewhere here above. Since schools are communities, therefore whole approach community a change approach to change as a whole community approach is relevant. I will be investigating the strategies with which the strategies of okay, I have it written, the strategies with which schools engage as a community. Right, so here we have a problem. Forget about the NAPLAN testing as yet. We have a problem that actually emerged from the purpose, which is the purpose is actually to find out how schools approach change, construct change. What's the school's approach to change? So it emerged from the purpose. It's related to the purpose. How schools go about it, right? So schools are, from readings, communities, you found out. Schools are communities, therefore a whole community approach is important. Here we go, strategies with which schools engage as a community. You can see how precise it is. Now, some of you will not do stuff which is as precise, and what will happen, you may actually, in the process of your readings, discover how to actually narrow down your objective, because it may actually be necessary for the sake of your sanity. Now, where did the NAPLAN test come up? Well, in that stuff that I ask you, I mean, typically what I expect from you, as I said in some of my teachings, what I expect from you is when you actually write your problem statement or goals, or call it as you wish, you have to write, you're writing a text for a reader. And you can't just jump, hence in this project, or in this project I will investigate blah. You can, but it's hard for me to read it. I have to tune into your head. So while I expect from you to actually, what I would like you to do actually, to just before you actually write your statement of the problem, ideally in one sentence. Remember, this is not it is not the way you will write maybe when you are a proper researcher, but this is how I want you to write as an exercise. This unit is an exercise in research skills. It has nothing to do with reality. What it does have to do is teaches you logical arrangement between components of a problem statement in this particular phase, and how they actually relate to one another. So have a mercy on the reader, and actually, in order for your project to be better understood, write something just before the problem statement, but short. Even the thing that I have written for, I have not written, but I have the way I corrected Willig's problem statement was too long. It had two at least paragraphs, or two about just before the problem statement. It was too long, but I didn't want to manage or work with it too much, because at the end of the day it's Willig's work, not my work. So I just kept it, but I focused it better. Well, at least I thought it was better. So have a mercy on the reader. Make sure that your project is always, your text is always well received, and for it to be well received, it has to, you actually have to write to the reader, not only to yourself. Your draft is to yourself. The thing you give to me to assess, it's actually written for me. So just before your problem statement, you write a little bit of a one sentence or so, introducing the problematic, not in Cambodia. It is very important to look at leadership. So what? So it is in, Poland. How's that leading us? It has to actually give us the reason why you're gonna look into, for example, as in Hub's question, into NAPLAN testing. How's that gonna, okay, so strategies for change management are important, right? Well, first of all, how did you even get there to begin with? But then how did we actually jump into NAPLAN testing? Well, because somewhere here, what Hub suggested, and Hub has done his readings, what he said was, look, teachers have particular attitudes towards NAPLAN, and these attitudes, as the literature shows, are not very productive, because it seems that the more negative teachers get, the worst result students get on NAPLAN tests. So since NAPLAN tests are not going or not yet, and since complaining alone may not actually change the way NAPLAN testings are conducted, well, maybe there are ways in which schools can actually go about dealing with those, managing those attitudes for better results. So, for example, for teachers to actually reflect on how they can creatively and critically engage with NAPLAN. It may not be just all that bad, right? So somehow in this one single sentence here, Hub is expected to say stuff like, attitudes are a problem, schools, the way how schools manage this is a problem, hence in this project what I want to do is blah 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 blah. You see, it just came out from this sentence straight away. And that he is focusing on school engagement as a community, or school change as a whole community approach, that came out from change. How do we do change in schools? We're no longer following the leader, but actually us together engaging in reflection, right? That's how he got it. And it's very simple. And now in his analysis, what he will do, he will identify those principles, then he will identify how things are done, he will compare how things are done in such a tight way that he can actually see whether particular principles of change which take a whole community approach have any bearing on what actually schools are doing. And he can say, well, maybe this one is happening, maybe this one is happening, maybe this one is happening, but all of those are not happening. So this is where change should actually happen, right? And in that way, you actually get not only a nice overview of what happens in schools, you do it critically because you have an independent framework about engaging in change as a whole community, which has nothing to do with schools. It's just independent principles that that Hub is going to identify. And in that way, you have a critical approach. Rather than just listing what schools have, you compare against some independent criteria, and you get a pretty good analysis of what happens, right? You can then make suggestions, and from that you can actually make recommendations. Now, when I say all of that, some of my, especially male students, are thinking, all right, I'll say better cooking, better thinking, and maybe better, right? So what happens here, you cannot reduce this analysis to just words. You actually have, as I said in my other video, examples, principles you have to identify, then you have to back it up with examples, then I can't remember what else I said. It has to be pages, not bullet points. I've seen bullet points, that's why I'm saying that. Right, so this is what research is. It's actually, research means looking at into what has been done, what kind of thoughts were put together, and now working with those, produce something which is an analysis and something new. Okay, so I hope I made it very, very clear. If I didn't, then maybe, or if you still find it difficult to actually apply to your question, well, I want you to remember one thing. When we were working with this problem statement in class, it took us 1.5 hours, almost 2 hours. And you'd think I'm an expert in it. So I cannot stress enough that this is a learning thing for us all, and learning takes time. It's not like you look at it and this is not demonstration and imitation. That's just a myth that even Australian curriculum somehow reinvented as well. I don't know where they get these things from. I think it's called desperation. But this is not about just demonstration and imitation. This is for you to now engage in quite a good analysis, not just literature analysis, but also discursive linguistic analysis as well. How do I actually manage the relationships in a sentence? And how come that Ania got a whole thing in one sentence? I have to have this skill. One of the reasons why there were many reasons why I developed this particular skill, but one of them, for example, this proved very useful when I inherited a PhD student who has worked on her PhD for 8 years and couldn't complete. She came to me, and how was I gonna engage in her project of 8 years? Basically, instantly, how was I gonna do it? Knowing that she had problems, I already knew, but if she had problems, then she didn't really focus her research properly, right? So we went through this little exercise. And you know what happened? She had no idea that that's what she was doing. Whatever the focus of her project was, it was an eye-opener for her. That's why it's so important to actually start engaging in this process because it helps you clarify what you're on about, right? What your project is on about. Okay, that will do from me. I tried to make it fast. I don't think I was as fast as I wanted to be. Okay, thank you.